Hi, it's Frank King, speaker and comedian, and yes, I'm in my car. It's a 1984 Toyota Tercel. I actually do little funny vignettes, 3-4 minutes, comedy, sort of slice of life called Tercel Talk. They're all up on YouTube if you're interested. Anyway, the working title of my TEDx talk is The Evolutionary Advantages of Mental Illness. And the premise is, what if those of us diagnosed with mental illness, I've been diagnosed with depression, are not in fact living with a genetic mutation so much as we are living with an evolutionary adaptation? What if mental illness is in fact, as Malcolm Gladwell says in his book David and Goliath, he mentions, I think in particular, dyslexia as a mental illness. What if it is in fact what he calls a desirable disadvantage? And if that is the case, what if, in addition to counseling and medication to treat a person's mental disability, we also gave them counseling and encouragement and information on how to utilize their mental ability, the one that they have by virtue of having a mental disability? What if we, mentally ill, yes, but also mentally able, imbued with these things because of their mental illness? What would the impact, and why should anybody care? What would the impact be on a child? I think it's the kids that came to mind first. What would the impact be on a child if we reframed mental illness as a combination of mental illness and mental ableness? What would the impact be on an adult who had been labeled years ago, decades ago, mentally ill? What would the impact of that reframing be? I think it would be incredibly positive. The thing that qualifies me to do this, to speak on this, is that I am a speaker and a comedian. My number one subject, my focus these days is suicide prevention, postvention, speaking and training. I also do corporate comedy, as you might have guessed. The TEDx talk I did was on generational depression and suicide. They run in my family. My grandmother committed suicide. My mother found her. My great aunt committed suicide. My mother and I found her. I was 4 years old. My sister battles depression and anxiety. My entire family. Everybody in the family. And I always wondered, and the genesis of this, the idea for this talk was, I always wondered if the flip side, if the mental ability that came with my mental disability, the positive, wasn't my creativity. And which has allowed me to make a living for the last 31 plus years, full-time, doing stand-up comedy and professional speaking. I also believe that it is part and parcel of my entrepreneurial abilities. But that's another story. But that's what I believe qualifies me to talk on this subject. So here's what it comes down to for me. It's an if this, then that. What's the connection? If this, being my mental illness, also gives me that, my additional mental abilities above and beyond what the normal person would have, what is the connection? And I believe the connection is why I have those abilities, and I believe the why is found in evolution. I believe it's not a genetic mutation, but an evolutionary adaptation. And that if we can reframe what we now call mental illness into a combination of mental illness and mental ableness, and then on the mental ableness side, treat it, encourage it, and teach people to utilize it properly, it may in fact become a desirable disadvantage. And the purpose of my first TED Talk was to start the conversation about depression and suicide in an effort to reduce the stigma. And I believe if we can reframe mental illness as mental illness and mental ableness and show why that is the case, back it up, that we can, again, change perception, thereby changing prejudices and reducing stigma. How about that? So here I am in my 1984 Toyota Tercel. By the way, the one nice thing about a 1984 Toyota Tercel is that when you fill it up with gas, it doubles the Blue Book value. Thank you.